For spine-chilling true tales of cursed swimming pools, discover the sinister secrets exposed. In a world where splashes turn into screams and innocent laughter morphs into haunting echoes, one neighborhood holds a terrifying secret that lingers in every ripple of water. Welcome to Willow Creek, a place where children play too near the edge of darkness, and the water waits, patient and silent, a predator with an insatiable thirst. When Sarah decided to escape the chaos of city life and move her kids into a quaint ranch-style home, she hoped for a fresh start, a community that could shield them from all what they left behind. Unbeknownst to her, she was stepping into a tale as old as the cracked pavement and overgrown lawns. The pool stood, neglected and shrouded in shadows. Every night, it called to her children. Ben and Emily found joy peering into its murky depths. "Mom, there's a friend by the pool," they exclaimed, faces aglow with delight. At first, Sarah chuckled, brushing it off as childish imagination, typical of kids thriving on a new environment. But soon, the starlit night's laughter turned sinister. Whispering echoes rolled through the stillness, chilling Sarah to the bone. Tired nights blurred into sleepless ones. Every flicker of the lights sent electric jolts through her. Outside, the neighborhood turned quiet as if it conspired together, hiding something unspeakable. She overheard fragments of murmurs, stories of drownings, of a child who vanished without a trace. The previous owner, they said, claimed the neighborhood just had a way of dealing with its past. Was it folklore or was it a warning? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to shield her children, Sarah ventured outside as they played near the pool one ominous night. Each step towards it felt like stepping onto cursed ground. The water shimmered under the moonlight, an enticing yet malevolent force. She squinted, heart pounding like a hammer as ripples danced. She looked closer. For a fleeting moment, she saw it, a pair of eyes, hollow and haunting, staring from the depths. Frozen in place, a dark realization gripped her heart. Who or what was their friend? Panic clawed at the edges of her mind. She needed to act. But as she turned to rush back inside, she felt the air grow colder, shadows closing in. Just when she thought it couldn't get worse, her children stood at the water's edge, eerily still, their innocent faces now twisted by something sinister. "Mom, come meet our friend," they chimed in unison, voices dripping with an unsettling glee that echoed off the walls of the neighborhood. With a suffocating dread, Sarah understood she must uncover the cursed legacy of that water to protect her family or risk losing them to its chilling embrace. The secrets ran deeper than the pool itself. What dark truth would she unearth before it was too late? Sarah's heart raced, a chaotic drumbeat against the rising tide of terror. The whispering dark pooled around her, thick and palpable. Ben and Emily's wide eyes glimmered, reflecting the moonlight as if they were two vessels for a malevolent spirit. She swallowed hard, trying to quell the rising panic. "Stay away from the water," she shouted, desperate in her attempt to grip her children's attention. But the words barely echoed. They seemed to dissipate into the night, lost in the oppressive silence. Instead of retreating, her kids stepped closer to the edge, as if entranced. An unearthly chill slithered down Sarah's spine. She felt the weight of the darkness pressing in, warping her reality. With every second that ticked by, shadows danced in her periphery, whispering words she couldn't quite catch. She had to do something to break this spell, to wake her children from whatever trance had befallen them. "Come on, let's go inside. We have a story to read," she urged, raising her voice to pull them back from the brink. But the smiles that greeted her were gummy and distorted, like masks barely concealing something monstrous beneath. "Moom, it's okay. Our friend wants to play." Emily's voice, though light, had an unsettling echo. The air thickened, wrapping around Sarah like a vice. She barely dared to breathe as something finally shifted beneath the water's surface, a dark swirl of movement, as if a hand had brushed the bottom, rising ever closer. "Play?" Sarah's voice carved through the oppressive haze. "What does your friend want?" Their giggles twined with the wind, mockingly light, bouncing off the walls of her sanity. "He wants to show us something," Ben cried out, his innocent face twisted in delight. Suddenly, the surface of the pool erupted, a dark shadow protruding, a form she could not distinguish. Sarah staggered back, a primal instinct to flee kicking in. But she couldn't abandon her children, not when they were so close to the brink. "Stay back," she yelled one last time, tears welling as sheer desperation took hold. The air felt thick around her, suffocating. She glanced down at her phone, no signal, no way to call for help. Her heart raced even faster. Even the stars seemed to blink out one by one, as if looking away from the horror unfurling before her. The chilling whispers grew louder, wrapping around her an ancient incantation still laced with bitterness. Sarah stumbled away from the edge, determination surging through her veins. "You're not going to take them. You hear me?" But her dreadful proclamation was swallowed by the laughter, sweet yet sinister, that rolled from her children. "Mom, he says you have to join us. It's fun." Ben stretched out his tiny hand, fingers outstretched like he was beckoning a friend rather than a nightmare. Sweat dripped down Sarah's back as she fought the urge to dive in, to save them from that embrace. It was her turn now to uncover the pool's brutal truth before it stole her children and buried them in the darkness beneath. Fleeing to the side, she frantically searched for anything, a clue, something, when suddenly, she observed the neighboring houses, their curtains drawn tight, homes seemingly dormant. No one to help, no one to witness the horror. The moment stood stretched in time, the air thick as she felt the weight of the water's force behind her. When she turned to face her kids once more, their laughter had morphed into something else, something dark and unnatural, all a part of something she couldn't yet comprehend. "Mom, come play with us," they sang, voices like jagged glass tearing through her mind. As shadows began to creep closer, curling around her feet, Sarah felt the ground tremble beneath her. The truth still eluded her, buried beneath the weight of the pool and the laughter of her children. What lurked beneath those murky depths? What awaited if she didn't act now? And as she took a trembling step closer to the edge, a scream threaded through the air. A voice calling from beneath the surface. Was it a child, or something far more sinister? In that moment, with dread gnawing at her, she knew the truth would come at a price. Would she pay it before it was too late? Sarah's breath hitched as she stepped closer to the abyss, the pull of the water almost magnetic. A sickening realization clawed at her mind. Whatever was beneath that surface was not just a mere reflection of her worst fears, it had a life of its own. The air crackled with a force she couldn't comprehend, and her heart pounded in response. Each beat a countdown to insanity. "Ben, Emily." Her voice trembled slightly, but terror lent strength to her words. "I need you to listen to me right now." It was a feeble attempt against the darkness that seemed determined to drown her in despair. But the children's glazed eyes remained fixed on the sinister pool, their small bodies hypnotized by the lure of what lay below. Suddenly, that hand surged forth from the depths, a long, pale limb glistening in the moonlight, fingers too thin and elongated, twisting unnaturally as if a puppet on strings. The sight sent a jolt of icy fear through Sarah, paralyzing her for a fleeting moment. A whisper rode the wind, soft and seductive. "Join us." Forever the words twisted her mind, making her question the sanity of her surroundings. Her instincts screamed for her to flee, yet her fight against the border of the reality was suffocating. "Mommy, he says you can see the pretty lights." Ben's voice rang clear, bright yet drenched in that horrible echo. Despite the terror blooming in her chest, Sarah forced her eyes to focus on her son. "You don't want to see the lights, sweetheart. They'll break you." In that moment, something flickered in Ben's expression, a fraction of awareness breaking through the trance. But it disappeared just as quickly, replaced by the giddy laughter that was now woven with something much darker, much more twisted. A surge of desperation clawed at Sarah. Suddenly, she remembered the old stories. The ones her grandmother told her as a child about spirits long forgotten. Beings that thrived on innocence, luring children to dark waters where they met unspeakable fates. Ben, Emily, think of our family. Think of home, she pleaded, taking another step forward, the water's surface shimmering like a living being. Something caught her eye, glimmering objects half submerged, shifting in the depths. Now the water wasn't just dark. It was alive with secrets. A low rumble echoed beneath her feet, breaking the rhythm of her frantic heart. The earth shook, as if the house itself was warning her. Don't go closer. But the moment hung heavy as the children stepped closer to the brink. Their laughter now threaded with guttural sounds that were utterly alien. In a heartbeat, the figure beneath the water twisted and turned, revealing a face, a contorted, hollow visage that seemed more than just a grotesque mirror of despair. Fury ignited in her chest. I will protect them, Sarah shouted, her voice bleeding strength. She yanked Ben's hand away, the grip of the water seeming to slacken as she yanked him back. But it wasn't over. The laughter turned to screams, their screams, befouled and distorted, as shadows slithered closer. A shadowy arm stretched toward her, grasping, clawing. Panic flooded her veins as she felt the breath of darkness wrap around her, suffocating. Instinctively, Sarah jerked back and turned to run, dragging her children with her, raw and desperate. Yet even as they stumbled away, the chill reached out, clinging to them like a spider's web. They weren't free yet. The shadows whispered promises behind them, beckoning them back, filling the air with an unholy compulsion. Mom, we want to go back, Emily cried out, her sweet face morphing, eyes suddenly soaked in shadows. No, Sarah shouted, holding her children close, her heart racing. We're leaving. The fight wasn't over. She could feel the pull, the determination of the darkness still grasping at them. But with every step she took away from the pool, a chilling certainty sank deep in her gut. They had barely escaped the maw of the water, but was it really vanquished? Or would it come seeking them again? As they emerged from the shadows, the night thickened again, cloaking them in dread. Outside, the world seemed eerily calm, unaware of the horror they had just faced. And a small flicker of fear ignited within Sarah. What if they weren't truly free? Sarah's heart hammered as a real dread set in, knowing their luck could turn at any moment. Something still lurked, watching, waiting in the dark. As they reached the door, something inside Sarah whispered the question she couldn't shake. Could the darkness truly be left behind? Would the pool come for them once more? The door creaked impossibly behind them, hinting at a truth that would soon claw its way from the depths. The door swung closed with a finality that left the echoes of their panic still hanging in the air. Sarah felt the weight of it behind her, a barrier between them and the darkness that still tugged at their consciousness. She pressed her back against the sturdy wood, her breath loud in the stillness, desperately trying to shake off the icy fingers of fear. Mommy, where are we going? Ben's innocent voice was like a knife twisting in her gut. He looked so small, and in that moment, the weight of her responsibility crashed over her like a wave. Please, just stay close, Sarah murmured, gripping their hands tighter. The warmth of their fingers contrasted with the chill that still seared deep inside her. They moved away from the door, eyes darting toward every shadow, alive with night's whispered threats. Outside, the world was unnaturally quiet. The crickets had ceased their song, replaced by an ominous stillness that settled over the neighborhood like a thick fog. Sarah glanced down the street, every house shrouded in darkness. Her mind raced. Was it possible none of their neighbors had even noticed? Or were they simply too consumed by their own fears to help? Mommy, I don't like it here, Emily whimpered, stirring the worrying thoughts whispering loudly in Sarah's head. The girl's wide eyes caught the faint moonlight, radiant yet eerily reflective. Just a moment earlier, they had been so lost in the enchanting pull of water. Now, the very environment they once knew felt sinister. Let us just get home, okay? "We'll be safe there," Sarah lied. The words felt hollow, a feeble promise that did nothing to ease the fear creeping back in. As they turned the corner toward their street, an old oak tree loomed above them, its gnarled branches resembling skeletal hands reaching into the sky. The wind picked up, howling through the leaves, swirling the evening air with a bitter chill that felt distinctly unnatural. Something primal struck her. Was it watching? "Mommy," the children whispered in unison, their voices quaking like the branches themselves. "What is it?" She barely got her words out, her heart pounding violently now. "Look," Ben pointed to the ground, where a dark form moved along the edge of the sidewalk, just beyond the glow of the streetlight. Sarah's breath quickened, adrenaline rushing through her veins. "Stay behind me," she commanded, but her own feet felt frozen, as if weighed down by chains. Anxiety mounted as the shadow pulsed and flickered, twisted and transformed, almost as if it were gathering itself. Suddenly it lunged. In a flash, a dark shape shifted from the shadows, racing toward her with unnatural speed. Sarah turned, grabbing the children and dragging them toward the safety of their home. Her heart pounded in her chest, a deafening drum that drowned out the roar of the wind. "Run!" she yelled, not daring to look back, her instincts propelling her forward, fueled by a primal fear for her children's lives. As they blasted through the threshold, she slammed the door shut, panting, the sound echoing in the silence. Their sanctuary felt fragile, as though the very walls were trembling under an unseen weight. "Are we safe now?" Ben asked, his voice quivering. Sarah turned slowly toward the window, gripping the curtain as her heart beat wildly in her chest. "I don't know," she admitted, her body frozen mid-motion, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Outside, a dark figure lingered close to the glass, as if joining them just beyond the thin barrier. The streetlight flickered ominously, and for a brief moment, she could have sworn it grinned, its wide, ghastly mouth stretching across an unsettling visage. Fingers of ice raced up her spine. "The pool it knows we're here," she whispered, her heart now fully engulfed in terror. She felt a powerful, malevolent gaze locking onto her, as if the dark waters had seeped into her very bones, whispering promises of despair. And just as she backed away, breaths trembling, the lights began to flicker around the house, a warning signal only she could interpret. Suddenly, a pounding noise thudded against the door, each impact synchronized to the chaotic rhythm of her heart. Unearthly whispers crept through the cracks, barely audible yet chilling in their familiarity, each taunt reminding her of just how close to the darkness they truly were. "Mommy, make it stop!" Emily screamed, her voice breaking the tension. And in that moment, Sarah knew they were not just haunted by the past. It was coming for something, someone. With dread pooling in her stomach, Sarah steeled herself. What if this wasn't the end? What if they never truly escaped the pull of that cursed water? She needed to find a way to break its grip once and for all. Clutching her children tightly, she whispered a vow to herself. This ends now, but outside, the shadows stirred, the night deepening with every second, and somewhere in the darkness, a haunting voice echoed, "You are ours now, forever." The walls seemed to pulse around them, as if the house itself was alive, suffocating them in a cocoon of dread. Sarah searched the shadows, her eyes wide and unblinking, anxiety sharpening her senses. She could still feel its gaze, heavy and accusatory, seeping through the cracks of reality, whispering insidious secrets meant only for her. The pounding continued, a steady reminder of the darkness outside. "It's just the wind," Sarah whispered, though her voice trembled and her lips felt parched. She turned her head sharply as a soft giggle floated through the air, like ice creeping down her spine. It was muffled, yet she heard it clear as day, childlike and mocking. "Mommy, I think I saw something," Ben whispered, his face pale as the moonlight illuminated his features. The courage of his small frame shattered her resolve, an etched reflection of her own panic. She knelt down to him, forcing a smile that made her lips feel cold and foreign. "It's okay. Just stay close to me." But inside, a storm raged. Fear clawed at her brain, spiraling into thoughts torn between reality and sheer terror. Another thud echoed against the door, more insistent this time. Panic surged, and Sarah's heart raced faster. "We can't just stay here," she said, glancing toward the dim hallway that led to other rooms. "We need to find a way out. Can we go upstairs?" Emily asked, clutching Ben's hand. "Maybe it won't follow us there." The idea of moving felt wrong, but the relentless pounding stole away her hesitation. Yes, upstairs," she decided, her voice barely above a whisper. The prospect of safety was too tempting. Like a ghost easing away, Sarah shifted toward the staircase, her breath catching as she felt the children's grip tighten around her. Each step felt heavier, as if the air thickened, warning them not to proceed. The echo of their footsteps drummed a nervous symphony against the wood. At the top, Sarah turned to check the landing behind her. Momentarily, relief washed over her as she noted nothing followed. Only silence greeted her. That silence, however, was deceptive, wrapping around her like a noose. An old door at the end of the hall caught her eye. The handle was tarnished, its surface flaking away, but it beckoned her a forbidden space shrouded in shadow. "What's in there?" she breathed, unaware the children were inching toward her as if drawn by a magnetic force. "Let us not go there, Mommy," Ben murmured, his voice quivering. "I don't like it. I just want to see," she said, curiosity battling her instinct to flee. With a heavy hand, she turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty room draped in cobwebs. Flickers of light danced on the walls from the nearby storm, illuminating a long-forgotten nursery set. A small crib stood in the center, rotting with splintered. A yellowed quilt sprawled over the edge, and the faint scent of stale air and decay filled her nostrils. Emily shuddered beside her, squeezing Ben's hand tighter. "Feels sad in here." Suddenly, a noise rippled through the air, soft yet distinct. A lullaby, sweet and melancholic, echoed from somewhere deep within the house. Sarah's heart raced. This wasn't just her imagination. Something was alive in this house, and it was waking. "Turn it off," Ben pleaded, his voice trembling as he pressed against her, the weight of terror pushing them closer. Taking a trembling step back, Sarah felt the urge to bolt. Yet something kept her anchored. "What if it's a clue?" she whispered, her skin prickling with fear. The lullaby grew stronger, a siren call that felt both enchanting and deadly. As she reached for the edge of the door frame, the lullaby faded, replaced by the sound of wet footsteps slapping against the wood, echoing down the hall. Their source was approaching, stalking toward her with determination. "Mommy!" Emily screamed as dark figures filled the doorway, their shapes shifting, eyes glinting with sadistic hunger. Paralyzed by fear, Sarah realized she had opened Pandora's box, and the repercussions could only lead to darkness. "Run!" she roared, breaking through the silence that enveloped her. But as she turned to flee, she felt the grip of icy hands wrapping around her ankles, pulling her back into the abyss of despair. The shadows loomed closer, the lullaby slipping back into her mind, each note an echo of impending doom. Panic tightened its grasp as Sarah fought against the unseen force. And in that final moment, she couldn't help but wonder, would they ever find escape in this house of horrors? Or was this the start of their eternal nightmare? The cold grip tightened, anchoring Sarah to the hardwood floor. She felt the chill seep into her skin, dragging her down deeper and deeper into the shadows that twirled around her like a violent vortex. The faces of the children twisted in fear, their cries mingling with the eerie lullaby that caressed the darkness. "Mommy!" Ben's voice shattered her resolve, piercing through the panic that grasped at her throat. She forced herself to lurch forward, desperate against the invisible bonds that held her. With one swift motion, she yanked her free leg from the icy grasp, stumbling back into the nursery's doorway. "Get out!" she shouted, urgency clawing at her vocal cords as she nudged the children toward safety. The shadows pulsed, shrinking back from the light spilling from the cracked door. For a moment, she felt hope blossom like a fragile flower in the grip of despair. Then, the figures surged forward, drawn by an insatiable hunger, mouths twisting into grotesque smiles. They reached for her, their hands grasping at the edges of her mind. Each touch sent bolts of ice coursing through her veins. Emily's piercing scream ignited her instincts. "Go!" Sarah shouted, guiding the children down the hall, her heart racing as dread tightened around her lungs. She sprinted toward the narrow staircase, her footsteps echoing like a death march. The crack of thunder outside split the air, and Sarah stumbled, her foot catching on a loose floorboard. She glanced back, terror twisting in her chest as the figures followed, their laughter melding with shrieking winds. They were gaining ground. "Mommy! Help!" Ben cried out, tugging at her side. She could feel her heart slamming against her ribs, but escape was a tantalizing glimpse out of reach. Gripping the banister, she dashed down the stairs, their descent a blur. Each step felt like a fight against gravity, an uphill battle against the house's malevolent pulse. When they reached the landing, Sarah held the children close, scanning the dimly lit living room. Shadows danced wickedly, teasing her with mirages of safety. "We need to find a way out," she gasped. Emily's eyes were wide, lost in the shadowy chaos. "There." Sarah pointed to the front door, battered but still standing. Hope ignited, but the moment she lunged forward, the door slammed shut with a resounding bang, resonating like a funeral dirge. The children's muffled gasps tore through her, the dread bubbling over into a roiling sea of panic. "Why won't it open?" Emily whimpered, tears sparkling like tiny stars in the darkness. Sarah pulled at the handle, fear straining her muscles. "No, open. Let us out." Her voice cracked, desperation blending with fury. It didn't budge. The walls seemed to shrink as the figures advanced, swirling around in a malicious dance, their hum of laughter morphing into hysteria. The air became thick with despair. "Mommy, I can't breathe," Ben whimpered, his little fingers clawing for her hand. "Just hold on," she shouted, spinning toward the dim hallway stashed with haunting obscurity. "We'll find another way." Her mind raced through the options, but deep down, a nagging thought lingered. What if they were meant to stay? With no time to question, they darted down the corridor. The house echoed with their footsteps, a heartbeat of dread pulsing behind them, and with every second, the illusion of safety unraveled. As they turned into an alcove tucked away from the madness, the air quivered. There, an old window beckoned, whitened by hasty layers of dust and grime. "We could climb out," Emily exclaimed, hope igniting her voice. But as Sarah approached, a heavy weight settled on her chest. The sound of giggling resonated eerily behind them, a soft, chilling sound that painted the walls with darker strokes. "Mommy," Ben said lowly, fear radiating from his eyes. The window rattled as she attempted to push it open, but it resisted, screaming against her efforts. The figures lurked, shaping shadows in the doorway, eyes gleaming with malicious intent watching, waiting. Something deep within her understood that the facade of escape was fleeting. She turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach as she faced the darkened figures. She had to make a choice, fight or become a part of the house forever. Just then, from the depths of the basement, a voice, an urgent, haunting whisper pierced through the tension. "Sarah, come here." A decision loomed ahead, one that could lead to salvation or damnation. She could feel the grip of both the house and despair tugging at her, and she had to choose. What lay in the basement? Would it be the answer, or yet another trap? As time froze, the question lingered, wrapped in shadows. The voice slithered around her, wrapping her in an icy embrace. "Come here." It was a call as familiar as her own heartbeat, yet impossibly distant. Fear twisted within her, both repulsed and irresistibly drawn to the unseen speaker. The basement loomed like a gaping mouth hungry for her next move. "Mommy, I don't want to go." Ben's eyes were wide, pleading, filled with unshed tears. Emily huddled close to him, both children trembling with dread. Their terror coursed through her, embedding itself in her heart. But Sarah felt cornered, the figures closing in, the shadows thickening like a descending fog. The window was a prison, a false promise of freedom. "We have to go down," she whispered, steeling herself against her own pangs of fear. It's the only way. As they crept toward the basement door, the shadows skittered closer, a cacophony of whispers erupting from their ghastly mouths. Join us, their voices were slick, sinister, sliding like oil into her mind. Each step on the creaking floorboards sounded like a countdown to an inevitable doom, echoing the urgency of her pulse. Desperation thrummed through her veins. Keep close. Don't let go of my hand, she instructed firmly, leading the way. As she grasped the doorknob, ice shot through her fingers, freezing her momentarily. She inhaled sharply, forcing it open with a jagged yank that echoed her own fractured thoughts. The basement door groaned, and a gust of stale air brushed against her face, thick with the scent of mildew and something more pungent, like decay. The staircase plunged down into darkness, lighter behind them but consumed by shadow ahead. The children clung to her as she took the first tentative step down. "Mommy, it's dark," Ben whimpered, his voice a small, frightened echo of vulnerability. "I know, sweetheart. Stay close to me." She squeezed his hand tightly, the warmth anchoring her as her heart raced. With each step down, the air morphed, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Dread filled her throat, nearly choking her. The whispers grew louder, urging them forward, urging her to listen to whatever awaited below. Sarah, the voice returned, more insistent this time, resounding from the depths, reverberating off the damp walls. "Come find me, who's there?" she shouted, defiance spilling from her lips. Yet the response came only in sinister giggles. The children flinched, nervously looking to their mother, who wanted nothing more than to shield them from whatever devilry lay ahead. Suddenly, a flicker of light illuminated the basement below, casting strange shadows that danced around the corners, creating nameless shapes that writhed and twisted, mocking her fears. Was that a figure shifting in the dim glow? She stepped down again, instinctively shifting her body in front of the kids. The oppressive aura thickened, thick enough to taste, and the laughter morphed into cries, childlike but deeply disturbing. "Sarah, we're waiting, don't you want to play?" Just as she felt the cloth of her sanity fraying, she spotted something in the flickering light. A shape, a figure, small and shrouded in shadows. It stood in the corner, barely lit, an unearthly silhouette that pulsed and beckoned. Her heart slammed against her ribs, an urgent drumbeat of terror. "Get back," she shouted, scraping against panic as the sickening laughter intensified, echoing off the damp, stone walls like it was alive. A surge of ghastly jubilation wrapped in malice. She grabbed the children, her legs refusing to move, her mind whirling. Was this the way out, or was she being lured into the very dark heart of the house? "Mommy!" Ben cried out, and it shattered her resolve, pulling her from the depths of horror. Her choice loomed ahead like a guillotine. In front of them, the shadow extended further, swallowing the flicker of light in an expanding void of terror. "What do I do?" she thought desperately. As the shadows coalesced, blurring her vision and wrapping around them, the voice returned, sharper this time, a single command drenched in malice. "You'll be just like us with one last glance at." The twisted figure, something deep inside Sarah ignited, fueled by a fierce instinct to protect her children. "Run!" she screamed, turning to dart back up the stairs, dragging them along. But the shadows surged, a frenzied tide reaching for them, grasping at their heels, laughing with an eerie chorus. Just as she reached the door, the weight of dark fury slammed against her. What awaited them if they escaped? The pulse of the house thundered wildly around her, transforming the very essence of her being into a battle between light and dark. Would the children stay safe? Would they survive? A split second before darkness consumed them, she felt the world blur and melt away, and then silence descended as the door slammed shut behind them, leaving a chilling question hanging heavy in the air. Had they truly escaped, or had they made a deal with the unseen horrors lurking just beyond? The chaos of the basement collapsed behind them, leaving Sarah panting for breath as she stumbled into the narrow hallway. Her heart thundered against her chest, echoing the last gasps of their harrowing descent. In the hazy remnants of whispered shadows, She could almost feel the tendrils of darkness stretching towards her, clawing at the edges of her mind. Mommy Ben's trembling voice broke through the suffocating silence, fear reanimating the shadows that threatened to cocoon them once more. Emily clung tighter to her brother, their faces pale and haunted, as if they had witnessed the ghosts of their nightmares. Sarah hushed them, pressing her back against the wall, scanning their surroundings. The dim light filtered through the upper windows, creating a patchwork of reassurance. But something felt wrong. An electric hum of tension crackled in the air, gathering strength like a storm about to break. "Why did we go down there?" Ben whispered, his voice quaking with tremors. "What was that thing?" "I don't know," she replied, forcing the words through a taut throat. "But we have to keep moving." They edged along the hall, every footfall sounding louder than the last, a steady reminder of their frailty. Sarah's pulse thrummed in her ears like a warning bell, her instincts screaming at her to flee, to find safety away from this wretched home. As she turned into the living room, a chilling draft spiraled around her, and the flickering light from a solitary lamp momentarily illuminated more shadows, figures that hung in the corners, half-formed, watching. "Mommy?" Emily's voice was barely a whisper. They huddled together, all three feeling the weight of unseen eyes boring into them. It felt like being back in the basement, surrounded by lurking horrors. "Stay close," Sarah urged, forcing her feet to move. She led them through the oppressive gloom, desperate to reach the front door. But something caught her attention, a faint sound, like a desperate tapping, echoing from the other side of the entryway. It was rhythmic, hypnotic, pulling at her sanity. "Mommy!" Ben's grip tightened. "I hate it here. I want to go home." Sarah couldn't find the words to comfort him. Instead, she approached the door, drawn to the ominous pulse of sound. "Maybe it's help," she murmured, unsure if she believed her own words, just to keep the children calm. "Let us just check it out." She placed her hand on the stained doorknob, feeling its coldness seep through her skin. Just as she turned it, the noise stopped, replaced by an eerie silence, a void that hung heavy and thick around them. Her heart raced, the calm before a deepening storm, as she felt the shadowy figures creeping closer in the corners of her vision. "Wait," Emily cried out, her voice rising in panic. "Don't open it." But it was too late. The door swung open violently, revealing darkness that yawned like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. Flashes of movement flickered inside, and there, vulnerable in the dark, were other children huddled, helpless, their faces gaunt and wide with unspeakable fear. "Help us!" one boy cried, his wide eyes glimmering. "They won't let us go." The sight sent a chill creeping down Sarah's spine, and she instinctively stepped back. The whisper they had fled seemed to coalesce around them, an unbearable pressure consuming the air. Her protective instincts surged, heart pounding as she jerked around to Ben and Emily. "Run!" The children hesitated, eyes fixated on the door, unsure whether to follow her command or stay with the others. That moment of indecision pulled at her gut, the dread crowding in behind them. Just as the shadows began to close in, she grabbed their hands, dragging them away, the desperate cries echoing like a siren's song. "Mommy, please," Ben begged, resisting her grip as their footfalls hastened. But the shadows advanced, stretching impossibly long, disembodied voices echoing ethereal chants. "Stay with us forever." Suddenly, a piercing shriek tore through the air, the voice of one of the children rising above the rest in a cacophony of terror. "Help us! Don't leave us!" Each plea struck a nerve deep within Sarah, stirring a visceral fear and an ache that twisted her heart. The sound pulsed with an urgency that sent dread cascading down her spine. She could feel the weight of their despair like an anchor trying to pull her back into the depths she had fled. With a wrench of her heart, she turned to face the door, where shadows pulsated and writhed. What had she brought her children into? Where would they find shelter if it was this cursed house that sought to keep them? Sarah gritted her teeth against the onslaught of doubt. She had to forge ahead. Survival demanded courage. Yet, as they raced down the hall, the whispers bloomed, swelling into a crescendo of terror. "Come back! Come play with us!" The very walls seemed alive, trembling with unshed secrets. Outside, the faint glimmer of twilight faded to night, leaving the house to loom like a hungry behemoth. What awaited them at the end of their flight? Was it freedom, or an even deeper abyss? They burst into the kitchen, stale air threatening to suffocate them. As a sense of dread curled around them like smoke, Emily gasped, eyes darting, and Sarah's heart dropped as she heard a knock from the basement door. Something was coming. The knock reverberated like an impending doom, shaking the air around them. Sarah felt the heat drain from her face as she scanned the dark kitchen for an escape. Any route that didn't lead back to the basement. The walls constricted with each breath, as if the house itself was squeezing the life out of them. "Mommy, what was that?" Emily whimpered, her small body trembling against Sarah's side. Ben stood frozen, wide-eyed and staring at the door, his knuckles turning white as he gripped his sister. "Shoo, it's okay. It's just wind. Let us go," Sarah whispered, pushing down her own rising fear, summoning a fierce resolve. They had to leave, now. She turned to the back door, its warped frame suddenly appearing as their salvation. She could almost taste the freedom that lay beyond. But as they moved, the kitchen felt alive. Shadows flickered, darting against the walls like feeding creatures. Sarah could swear they twisted, hiding something unholy, a malicious presence coiling around the doorframe as they approached. Another knock, this time louder, more insistent. "Mommy!" Ben cried, the terror in his voice a raw wound that cut deep into her heart. "Please, stay quiet," she snapped, gripping his shoulder before shaking off the despair threatening to overwhelm her. "Just stay close to me." But her voice was drowned beneath the sound from the basement. It didn't just knock. It began to thump, a steady, deliberate pounding that sent a pulse of panic through her veins. What was waiting in the dark for them? Whatever it was, it wanted out. Sarah shoved the door, panic surging as the knob rattled. Locked, she twisted it again, pleading silently for the latch to yield. Behind her, the tapping escalated into frantic drumming, as if something was clawing its way up from the bowels of the earth. "Mommy, we need to go." Emily's voice broke, and it struck Sarah. They were still too close, too exposed. She needed to get them away from the door before it burst open. "Follow me," she yelled, darting towards the stairs at the far end of the kitchen. The children stumbled after her, their small feet pounding against the floorboards. Each step echoed, reverberating against the dread that wrapped around them like chains. They ran up the stairs, the creaking timber beneath echoing their fright. As they reached the top, a sudden draft swept past them, chilling Sarah to the bone. It felt wrong, like unseen hands stretching forth to grasp them. She could almost sense the swirling darkness reaching into the very fabric of reality, pulling at her sanity. "Where do we go?" Ben's voice was tight with fear, his eyes darting back toward the stairs. "Anywhere but here." Sarah breathed, urgency clawing at her throat as she pushed open the nearest door. The room was dark, its windows draped in heavy curtains, cutting off whatever light was left. Smelled musty like a tomb. They stepped inside, and Sarah quickly shut the door behind them, pressing her back against it. She could hear the pulse of the house, the thumping now muffled, but still there a heartbeat of anger. "Mommy?" Emily's soft voice trembled. Sarah whispered. The children's eyes glistened with confusion and fear, wild in the shadows. "We need to hide. Be quiet." Suddenly, a low growl slithered through the silence of the room, chilling Sarah to her core. It reverberated in the still air, vibrating through her bones. She turned wide-eyed to her children, who mirrored her trepidation. "Did you hear that?" Ben whispered, tears staining his cheeks. Before she could respond, the growl morphed into a hiss, echoing through the room, reverberating off the walls. The curtains fluttered like trapped wings, and Sarah's heart raced. She glanced around frantically, looking for a place to conceal them from the horrors lurking just beyond the door. With a flick of her wrist, she tore the heavy curtains aside, revealing a window. Glassed in darkness, it looked down to a narrow alleyway. Their only chance, she thought, was escaping into the night. But just as she opened it, The air came alive, an unmistakable rancid stench invaded her senses, overwhelming her. "Mommy!" Emily screamed, pushing away from the noise. Then, the door burst open, splintering as it swung wildly against the wall. Sarah whipped around, paralyzed with terror. Cold chills ran down her spine. A shape loomed in the doorway, a figure clad in shadows, its features obscured. It stepped forward, a low snicker erupting from its lips, sending a chill through her bones and deep into her gut. "Let us play," it whispered, voice dripping with malice as the air thickened with dread. There was no way out now. What would become of them in the consuming dark? Was there anywhere safe left to run? Sarah's heart raced, stomach twisting into knots as the creature loomed closer. She could feel its gaze drilling into her, the weight of its presence enveloping the room. The air thickened, suffocating her resolve, and for a moment, panic threatened to drown her in despair. "Stay behind me!" she hissed, urgency propelling her words as her instincts kicked into high gear. The children clung to her, their tiny bodies trembling, but she couldn't let them down. Not now. The figure inched forward, shrouded in darkness, a twisted smile inching across its face. An otherworldly hiss escaped its lips, melding with the whispers that flitted through the air. "You can't escape." Taking a deep breath, Sarah forced her voice to rise above her fear. "Get back." She stepped towards the shadow, holding her ground despite the dread coursing through her veins. "You won't take my children." The figure paused, eyes glinting with a mixture of hunger and surprise at her defiance. It shuffled backwards slightly, and for a fleeting second, Sarah sensed uncertainty. Seizing the opportunity, she turned around and yanked her kids toward the window. "Climb," she urged them, heart pounding like a war drum. Ben barely hesitated, scrambling up with Emily close behind him. The growling hiss from the creature erupted, a terrible roar of frustration, and they all knew time was running out. Sarah pushed them toward the opening. "Hurry, darling. Don't look back. Go." With a final glance at the darkness, she quickly followed, squeezing through the narrow space, the fabric of her shirt snagged on the glass. The night air whipped around them, a jarring contrast to the suffocating darkness they had fled. Sarah landed on the damp ground outside, knees hitting the earth. She scrambled to her feet, glancing up toward the window. The figure stood poised in the darkened room, shadows swirling in a frenzy, mouth twisted in rage as it banged against the wall. "Run!" Sarah shouted, grabbing the children's hands and sprinting away from the house, the moonlight illuminating their path like a beacon of hope. The whispers faded, drowning in the sound of their desperate footfalls. As they raced down the sidewalk, the oppressive weight of their former home slipped away. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her, pulling them along as the adrenaline gave way to a shared sense of urgency. But even as they ran, an eerie gnawing sensation lingered at the edges of Sarah's mind. "Mommy, are we safe?" Emily panted between breaths, her small hands squeezing Sarah's like a vice. I think we are," Sarah managed to say, though her heart raced with uncertainty. Were they truly free, or had they merely escaped the clutches of something deeply rooted in their haunted past? With each step, they drew farther from the terror of that cursed pool, the laughter that echoed through the shadows. But the weight in her chest was palpable. "We need to keep moving," she urged, pulling them forward, unyielding. They reached the end of the block, turning a final corner before the weight of fear broke. Ahead, the glow of streetlights illuminated a welcoming storefront. The safety it promised beckoned to them, a sanctuary against whatever darkness had chased them through their own home. As they pushed into the warmth of the small cafe, the smell of fresh brewed coffee and baked treats enveloped them. A few patrons glanced up, but most were lost in their own worlds, completely unaware of the horrors that had just unfolded. "Can we sit?" Ben's plaintive voice broke the silence, exhaustion evident in his tone. "Of course," Sarah replied, quickly steering them to a small round table in the corner, a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. They huddled together, breathing in tandem, and for a moment, the darkness felt far away. Sarah tried to calm her racing heart as she wrapped her arms around her children. They seemed to draw strength from each other, the warmth igniting a spark of hope. But deep down, an unsettling thought wormed its way to the forefront of her mind. Would they ever truly escape what had lurked in the shadows? Suddenly, the door swung open behind them. An eerie breeze swept through, chilling her spine, disrupting the fragile peace they had fought to find. In walked a stranger, an unsettling grin painted across his face as his gaze flickered to where they sat. "Looks like you just had quite the adventure," he remarked, his voice smooth yet laced with an unmistakable edge. Sarah's heart sank. Panic gripped her throat. How had the darkness followed them here? "What do you want?" she demanded, pushing her children protectively behind her, the primal instinct to shield them flaring anew. The stranger shrugged, stepping forward as if he held all the answers. "I want what you have. The weight of darkness is a powerful thing. Leave us alone," Ben cried, clinging to her side, eyes wide with fear. "No one escapes it, my dear." "Not really. Once it's marked you, you will always belong to it," as his laughter echoed behind them. Dark and hollow, Sarah tightened her grip on her children. She may have escaped the house, but the battle was far from over. "Stand strong," she whispered to them, the determination surging within her. "Whatever happens, we fight together. This ends now." In expressing their resolve and unity, they would forge ahead, determined to confront whatever darkness dared cross their path. With that thought tightened around her heart like a shield, Sarah inhaled deeply, her choice made. They would fight for freedom. They would never look back. But as shadows continued to stretch and shift around them, an ominous reminder lingered. The darkness they had fled was far from finished. Stay close. Stay strong. And no matter what happens, never allow the light inside to be extinguished. What would confront them next? Only time would tell. But one thing was clear. They would face it together. You need to subscribe now to make sure you catch the next chapter of this spine-tingling adventure. Smash that like button now to help with the reach of this channel. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Your support means everything to us.